Duty, honor, country dictate what you ought to be, what you can be, what you will be.
The destiny of man is not measured by material computations. When great forces are on the move in the world, we learn we're spirits, not animals.
Now, we are the masters of our fate.
Howdy, gents. Welcome back to another episode of the Wolf and Iron podcast. I'm your host, Mike Yarbrough, founder and curator of wolfandiron.com. And fellas, I'm really glad you're here because this episode has got me super fired up. I just got done recording this with Mike Morrison, and he's one of the guys that works with Overland Experts. This is a great episode, guys, because it's all about practical adventure and overlanding and off-roading and that kind of stuff. Now, if you're like me, you've seen these guys doing off-road stuff. Maybe they're on Instagram, maybe they're on Facebook, maybe you're watching them on YouTube, and it seems like so much fun. At the same time, it seems very inaccessible for most of us. We have family commitments, we've got budget constraints. We don't have 40 or 45 grand to just throw at a vehicle. We don't have money, hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars to go on these epic quests. But as it turns out, this isn't something that you've got to go all in on, and that there are actually different levels to off-roading. And there's some great ways to get started, and it even gets started with the family. And so Mike Morrison actually breaks this down for us in this episode. And his team with Overland Experts, they train everybody from SEALs to special forces to blue collar, white collar, doesn't matter. Everybody, anybody who wants to off-road, they're going to show you how to do it. And guys, I know you're going to get a lot from this. I do want you to stay tuned, though. Make sure that you're not only subscribed to the podcast, but also subscribed to our email list, because we're going to be announcing, if we haven't already done so, we're going to be announcing a special event with Overland Experts down the road, and pun intended there, down the trail. Maybe that's how it should be. Where we're going to have some Wolf and Iron guys get together, and this is probably going to be one of our very first meetups, actually. So I don't know, more likely it'll be here in the U.S., and it'll be in the U.S., but it'll here in North Carolina, but we may end up having things that kind of spawn off and some of their different locations as well across the country. So love to have you guys involved in that. So stay tuned. Make sure you sign up on the email, and you can do that by going to wolfandiron.com/email. That'll take you to a little form there you can fill out to get signed up. Don't want to miss out on that. And without further ado, here's Mike Morrison with Overland Experts. Mr. Mike Morrison from Overland Experts, welcome to the Wolf and Iron podcast. I'm just glad to have you here.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
So you and I were chatting a little bit before we kicked off the call here, and I'm just excited about what you guys are doing with the growth that you're seeing in Overland Experts, and even just some of the people that you're training. I know the guys are going to be interested in hearing more about your story, about how you got started, and really just kind of how you made that shift from not being happy with the career that you had, and then really finding something that you had a passion about and just diving into it and then seeing that grow. But for the guys who aren't familiar with Overland Experts, give us an idea of what that business is and what you guys do.
So we are a four-wheel drive training company that trains military groups, recreational groups, and commercial groups all over the United States. Bruce Elfstrom created the company. He was a world traveler, and he guided trips all over the world for people, and he saw the need for people to learn how to drive off-road. So he created Overland Experts about 17 years ago, and then from there, the military caught on when their kind of way they operate changed from the standard military vehicles to the non-standard type military vehicles, basically what you and I drive every day, just standard four-wheel drives like Toyota Tacomas, which they use Toyota Hiluxes, and Toyota Land Cruisers. So they were break-in vehicles, and because they were used to going fast, so they made the decision we need to learn a little bit more about how to preserve our vehicles when we're in our area of operations. So they latched on to the Overland Experts curriculum because we are based off of three main principles. The first is personal preservation, protecting the driver and the passenger in the vehicle.
Yeah.
The second is vehicle preservation, kind of like a mechanical horse. You've got to use that vehicle to get you from point A to point B. and then back to point A again. And if you don't treat it right, it's going to break and it's going to leave you sitting. And then environmental preservation, which isn't necessarily so big on the military side, but it does have an application for them as well, especially when you're running a convoy. The very last vehicle, if the trail's torn up after the first 10 vehicles, the 11th vehicle is going to have a much harder time.
So this sounds like an awesome career. Give us an idea for the guys how you got started going down this trail, so to speak.
Yeah. So my name's Mike Morrison, or Michael Morrison. Married 11 years. I've got 2 boys, a 5-year-old and a 9-year-old, and they are all boy. I started four-wheel drive training about 7 years ago. I started part-time working for a company called URI OffRoad Training Center with a gentleman named Scott Fields. And kind of what moved me to that point was I was doing landscaping was my job. And that's what my degree was in. But I just was not happy doing it. Was bored, more or less. So I met Scott Fields, and I just started a little four-wheel drive shop. And we became friends right off the bat. And he was training, so I would promote my four-wheel drive shop in his training classes. Yep. And then all of a sudden, he needed a trainer. So I said, awesome, I'll help you out for a class. And after training one class, I knew this is what I want to do with the rest of my life. This is awesome. So I started a path after that. He told me, he said, you got to become certified as a four-wheel drive trainer through the International Four-Wheel Drive Trainers Association. Yeah. And then we'll work together. So I started that process. I went through what they call testing for certification, passed, got my certification, and started from there. Fast forward to about 2.5 years ago, and Scott made the decision. He said, I'm going to sell the company to Overland Experts. And Overland Experts had been in the area. Scott did all of the recreational training, and then Overland Experts did all the military training, and they worked together. So Scott said, I'm going to sell the recreational training to Overland Experts, and I want to focus on events. So I was kind of like, well, where does that leave me? And when he sold URI OffRoad Training Center to him, Overland Experts said, well, we need someone to run the recreational side down at URI. And I said, well, I'm your guy. I'll do it. Yeah. So they hired me, and at that point in time, the four-wheel drive training became my full-time job. And it's advanced from there. Now I travel all over the United States training, and we train everything from special forces to just everyday recreational groups, power companies, NGOs, humanitarian aid type stuff, as well as, like Navy SEALs, Rangers, things like that. Awesome. And we do that all over the United States. And we have 3 facilities right now, starting our 4th in East Haddam, Connecticut is the main facility the first facility that was opened up by Bruce Elstrom that started the company about 17 years ago. And then the second facility I opened was Orange, Virginia. And then the third one was URI, North Carolina, and that's now our biggest facility. We do probably 90 to 95% of our training right in URI, North Carolina. And we're working to open up a facility now in Salt Lake City, Utah. Yeah.
Oh man.
That's
awesome. Yeah.
There's been a big call from the military and the recreational side, but primarily the military, saying, hey, now we've gone through your level 1 class. We know what we need to do as far as the driving. What do we need to do for a level 2 class? So out west, we can easily support a 5-day or easily do a 5-day unsupported trip where, they have to carry all their gear and do everything to go into the backcountry and then be able to bring their vehicles back.
So, as you're kind of talking about that, especially in the idea of training military to operate in their, whatever the area of operations is, and I know a lot of guys are thinking, okay, Hiluxes, that's going to be Middle East somewhere, wherever it happens to be. How do you guys train folks for, to kind of navigate that terrain? I mean, is just terrain is terrain? Because I'm thinking here in like URI area where you guys operate, which is close to me here in Charlotte, that's, I'm thinking muddy, kind of rocky, hilly, but not necessarily sandy. And I'm just thinking that would be different. But am I overthinking that or not?
No, not at all. So with the variation of facilities that we have, we try to replicate the terrain as best as we can. So that's why we have so many facilities. If someone has a different area of operations that they're going into in the military, we can send them to a specific area. It is, rocks are rocks, mud's mud, and sand. So we lease public, or we lease private property as well as use the public lands at URI. So we develop our training center, and we have areas where we can train sand driving and sand recovery as well. That way we can give them kind of the full gambit of different terrains that they'll experience.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I'm thinking too, like, there's got to be such a big difference between the SEALs that show up on the scene, right? These guys that are highly trained, that are experts in so many areas, and they're just, for those guys who have met SEALs in the past, they're just a different kind of breed. Compared that to like the white collar guys that are coming out for sort of a recreational, sort of fun event. Give us an idea of like, I guess what it's like to bring these the SEALs in, or any special forces, whoever it happens to be, military, they're coming in to get trained on this stuff. What's it like for you guys to interact with these guys? They're very regimented in a lot of cases, but at the same time, they've got to learn something from you guys that they probably don't know enough about or anything about.
It's for me, it was a huge culture change for me. I don't have a military background. Some of our trainers do have a military background, but it was a huge culture change because before I became a four-wheel drive trainer, I was kind of your typical kind of meek and mild guy, always in the background. And when I became a four-wheel drive trainer, I really kind of came into my own because I finally had something that I was very sure of myself with. So stepping into the military training with these guys who they're type A mentalities, right? They're the guy when they're there. So you really you don't have to be the big guy, but you do have to be sure of what you're instructing. You have to keep them engaged, to keep them moving so that they understand that you are what they call an SME, which is a special material expert, so that they understand that they have something that they can learn from you. So you do have to be on your toes and keep that moving forward. And for me, it's a huge honor because I really enjoy teaching the military and giving them something that they desperately need. But it is a huge culture change for someone that's not used to that type of thought process. And the different groups, even within the different groups, the SEALs and the Special Forces, it's drastically different how they take to learning. The Special Forces is probably one of my favorite to teach because those guys are just very, very, very switched on.
Yeah.
They really love and really understand the need to get that material and apply it to what their job set is for what they're going to be doing.
Yeah, that's really interesting to think about, just the different mentalities that kind of get ingrained into the guys that go into one branch or another branch. It's interesting too that this aspect of being a leader in that kind of way, a subject matter expert or special materials expert, that that's something that guys can learn to put on, even though it may not necessarily be part of their default personality, right? I mean, like if you're not a type A guy, there may be a need for you to step in and be a type A-ish kind of personality when you're required to step up and be a leader and when people are counting on you. And so I think that's really interesting. That's a good point that guys can take away from on that. So was it like,
yeah,
go ahead.
It was a huge change for me. just in the fact that I was a meek and mild guy, but I wanted to be more. So when I started my path to become a four-wheel drive trainer, that's why it changed. Ultimately, it changed my life so much, because even in my marriage and my personal life, I was craving some type of adventure. I was craving stepping out kind of into my own, because I was working landscaping before that, but I wanted to step out into something that was my own, improve myself in some type of adventure. So becoming a four-wheel drive trainer and that subject matter expert and being able to do that was a huge change in my life. And it's turned me from being, just the average everyday, come home, sit on the recliner type dad, to now it's like, where's the next adventure? Where are we going next? What are we doing next? Getting my kids outdoors and just changed an entire way of life for me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I can definitely see that. And so that kind of leads me to another point. It's actually a good segue. I'm thinking about the guys who, sort of white collar, maybe, maybe not even white collar, but just the guys that don't have a chance to get out and do adventurous things, right? It's those guys that are just the opposite of what you just said, or maybe a little bit how you used to be. Come home, sit on the couch, laze around, doesn't really have a lot of motivation in life. But at the same time, all those guys are craving adventure. They want something that's going to give their life purpose and meaning and some thrill. What is it like for the guys who sort of show up from the recreational side of things to get trained up and then go through some of that, the experiences with you guys of having that adventure? Can you guys see like an actual change in their demeanor and their personality when they leave as compared to when they showed up?
Yes. I'll actually tell you a story. Okay. And this was just recent, and it made me really realize kind of what the point you're proving with this is. When I was out west on my last trip, I was in Salt Lake City, Utah, kind of doing some reconnaissance and stuff, and I drove through some of the public lands out there, and I went through a camping area, and there was quite a few people out there camping, and I drove past this one family, and there was this dad out there, and he was trying to put up the tent. It was almost dark, and he was unloading the family SUV. The kids were running around going nuts, and the mom just looked like, what are we even doing here? And I looked at the look on the dad's face, because he was trying to put up the tent, and the look on his face was just like, man, I've never done this before. Everybody's looking at me like I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm screwing up. And it was just this look of desperation on his face. And it made me realize something that, this adventure that I live of being outdoors and camping and on the move constantly and training, it's not something that everybody does every day. Nobody's born with how to start a fire. Nobody's born with how to put up a tent and be outdoors. So it's really changed the way that I teach my classes. My classes are no longer just, I'm giving you the four-wheel drive skills and you're going to do what you do after that. Now I'm giving them a gateway to adventure. And we always saw the change in men when they came through the class, because now suddenly they had a skill set that they didn't have before and they were excited about it. But now that we've changed this class into more of giving them a gateway to adventure, using their vehicle, we call it VBAT, vehicle-based adventure travel, or overlanding. But now that we're giving them a tool to be able to do that and creating this experience for them, you see guys come in and they're kind of the same way. They come in, they don't really want to ask the questions. They don't really want people to know they're in that class learning how to drive off-road too. By the end of the class, they're so excited about what they've learned. They're ready to go out and hit the trails right away. Yeah. They're ready to plan their next trip. They're hanging out after the class, throwing questions around and asking about where they can take their families. Where's a good place to take their families?
Yeah. Well, and I think too that what holds us back a lot of times from adventure is that lack of confidence. I've never done that before, and we don't even perceive it like that. We just, it's almost like, yeah, it'd be cool to go camping, but there's a blockage there, and that blockage a lot of times is that lack of confidence and the lack of experience of having that experience that's so. I don't really know how to explain it. You get out in nature, there's something that just overcomes you. You just want to be there longer and longer, and it's relaxing, but it's also exciting at the same time. and then learning those new skills and things like that. But I think that fear of the unknown and the not knowing what it is that we're missing out on that prevents a lot of guys from getting out and having an adventure. And what I like about what you guys do is that it makes it very practical. It's not just let's go camping in the woods, which is nice, but it's, hey, let's go camping, let's do some off-roading, and let's learn some skills. So we're actually there for a reason, and having you guys as coaches there to guide them through all that process is just that would really help alleviate a lot of those issues and really get guys started, just like you said.
Yeah, and it's so available now with the vehicles that are on the market, because you can buy, for instance, the 4-door Jeep Wrangler or the new Toyota 4Runner, and it's a vehicle mom or dad can drive the kids to school or go get the groceries in and whatever every day of the week, and it's practical, but they're so capable just in their stock form that you can take them just about anywhere you want to go in the United States with the right skill set for some type of adventure and load the whole family up. I've got my 2 boys, and my wife and I will throw them in our Toyota 4Runner, and we'll take off, and we can go anywhere we want to go. It's like just a means to the next adventure. So
that kind of gives me some questions then, because as I think about the guys who are that are serious about 4-wheel drive, all that kind of stuff. We kind of got two sides of it. One is the good old boys around here that they got the big tires, they got the trucks raised up, and it's just, it's just muddy as all get out. There's those guys. Then you got the guys who are just investing, it looks like a ton of money into, they buy the Jeep, but then they've got it all tricked out with everything, to go and do some serious stuff. But you're saying that there's some adventure to be had at maybe like a level 1 type of adventures, and just like you said, like a 4Runner or something like that.
Definitely. So there's 2 sides to the off-road world. There's what you call it. They can basically be broken down into two main categories. There's the trail riders who they have the really highly built vehicles, and they're just going to ride the trails for the day or for the weekend. And that's typically like your heavily modified Jeeps and your trail buggies and things like that. And then you have your what they call overlanders, which is now the biggest market segment in the off-road industry. It's fastest growing market segment since early 2000s, and it's just gotten huge. And they're the people who are building these vehicles. They're not massive tires, normally no bigger than a 35. Sometimes you'll see them a little bigger, but no bigger than a 35-inch tire. They've got the roof rack and everything they need. Their vehicles are basically equipped like a home on wheels that they can live out of, and it's using that vehicle as a means to your next adventure. They may not be going to the trails just for a trail ride. They may have their kayaks on top or their mountain bikes on top, and they're looking for the next place that they can go have their next weekend adventure or week-long adventure on some type of trip that's primarily going to be off-road. It may not be, the level 10 trail like Daniel or Dickie Bell at Uwharrie, but it's going to be something that's going to test their skills to get there, and then they're going to have a great adventure, and then they're going to have to test their skills to get back out again because they're going to use that vehicle to get home.
So I'm just kind of thinking through this. So let's say there's a guy who's listening to this podcast and he's going, that is exactly what I want to do. I want to be all about that. How do I get started? So, okay, you go out and you pick a, come out with you guys and get some training and stuff like that. And I'm sure he'll pick up a lot of information about the rest of this as well. So he's going to go out, he's going to get started. What's other than maybe like trading in the family van for, something else, what are kind of the steps for the guys that want to get started down this road? I mean, is there a website? Is there obviously there's a community, but like, how do you find these trails? How do you find out where to go and to do this stuff?
So there's a couple of great communities. We always push people towards a group called American Adventurist, and they are a group that's about getting back to the American morals and values and getting outdoors. They are a nationwide group started by a gentleman named Dave Bennett, who is a phenomenal guy, and he's got a group of guys that help him run it. Tim Blue is one of them, and they are they are phenomenal men. They have created this group who just shares all this information, trails, things like that, where they can go and camp and do all these different things. And people can join this group. It's free of charge. They hold events and things where there's classes that they can learn. They also have a great forum at AmericanAdventurers.com where they can talk with other people who are going through the same process, learn about modifications to the vehicle. So that's a great group to join. Our recommendation is always select the vehicle that fits your life needs, primarily, because in today's world, it's not necessarily something where you can have just this overland vehicle that sits to the side. So pick a vehicle that fits your life needs. It may be a Subaru Outback, because you need good fuel economy. Nothing wrong with that at all. Once you pick that vehicle that fits your life needs, we try to get people to come through a class. And once you've come through a class, you now have the skills to take that vehicle with no modifications a lot further than if you had invested the $5,000 to $10,000 into that vehicle. And then now you've got a really capable vehicle, but you don't have the skills to drive it.
Yeah. Right,
so
right.
We push a lot of our classes in teaching the driver skills, because vehicles now have all kinds of little nifty gadgets. You can buy vehicles like a Toyota 4Runner comes. You can get it with a rear locker, with A-Track and crawl control, which are all great tools to use, downhill descent control, things like that. But if these tools fail you in the field, you still need to be a driver to be able to drive back out. So we focus on the driver, and once you've come through our class, then we have a mindset that once paid is always paid. Once someone comes through a class, we help those people to develop that vehicle past that point. Once you have the skills, now start thinking about modifying that vehicle. What do you really need to get on the adventure that you want? Is it a small lift with a little bit bigger tire size, armor? Do you have a family? Are you looking for extended trips? Do you need a fridge? Do you really need all these different things inside your vehicle to get you out there to do what you want to do?
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm just getting excited just thinking about this. So, are there any principles that you could share for the guys that are that maybe are just getting started at this? So they've kind of gotten some of their gear, they've gotten the vehicle picked out, they're sort of at that next stage where they're ready to go. Are there any kind of principles that you guys would, like 3 steps, 3 principles, I don't know, that you guys would share for these guys to make sure they have a good, safe trip? Anything like that?
Yes, most definitely. So being guys in general, right, we're adrenaline and testosterone fueled. Yep. The first thing is when something happens or you hit the trail, even right when you hit the trail, is first and foremost, air down your tires, because even though that's something that we don't think about a lot when we go off-road, it really is one of the hugest impacts, not only to our driving capabilities, because now we've got a second layer of suspension. We've also got better ground contact for traction with the tire, but it's also big on the environmental side, which is a huge issue in the off-road world. So airing those tires down to get you that little bit of extra ability of your vehicles is first and foremost. Okay. We have a 5-step system that we go through that we teach people for driving off-road, and I won't go into that because it's pretty long-winded, but airing tires down is part of that. The second step is because we're kind of testosterone and adrenaline driven, is when you get in a situation, you can't quite make it over that obstacle, or maybe you get stuck, or something's happening. It's just to slow down, take a deep breath, and look at what you're doing and try to figure your way through it. Thinking about the 3 principles that we keep in mind with our curriculum of personal preservation. Is this safe for me to be driving through? Is anybody inside the vehicle in danger? And then next, is the vehicle in danger of me going through here? How can I make it through this obstacle without putting the vehicle in danger or the occupants in danger? And if I can't, is there another way that I can go around? You don't necessarily have to make that obstacle. There may be another way around it. And then with the environmental aspect of it, just keeping, as long as you're protecting the environment, not spinning a tire, not running really high revs with your engine, trying to just blast through something, then you're keeping the vehicle preservation and the personal preservation in mind.
Right. That's good. I like that. Those are solid. So I'm thinking too about, going out with the family, and obviously we're thinking we got kids involved, and, that could be scary. Get yourself in some hairy situations there. Do you guys typically recommend people go out with, like other guys that, somebody can pull you out if you get stuck, that kind of stuff? Is that like or is it just sort of like, just go do your best?
We do recommend that people don't travel alone. It does happen. We understand that it happens. For instance, last trip I did out west, when I went from Flagstaff, Arizona up to Salt Lake City, Utah, I was by myself. It happens, but we recommend that people always travel in groups. But the thing about overlanding is, which is our primary market segment that we focus on, is that a lot of times it is sole travel. So, especially for beginners, we really recommend being a part of some type of four-wheel drive club, but also have a group that you go out with. If you are going out alone, having some type of emergency plan in place, so that people know where you are, not deviating from that plan while you're out there, and some way to keep contact with the people that you're that are back home thinking about you. So, for instance, all of our trainers, if we go on a trip somewhere, they all carry some type of DeLorme in reach or spot, so that if something goes wrong, they can get out. But understanding that when you are out on an extended trip, you are outside what they call the golden hour, which is, where you should make it where any type of emergency services can get to you within that golden hour, which is normally how they kind of figure it to keep you alive if something happens. So you've got to know that you can take care of yourself longer than that golden hour.
So when you guys are going through the training, are you guys also teaching people any skills related to that kind of stuff? I mean, like how do you survive? Let's say you're stuck out somewhere, your radio, cell phones doesn't have any signal, whatever the case is. Are you guys also walking people through like kind of basic survival type of things, or what?
We do get into that a little bit. That's actually part of what we're looking to do in the future, is getting more into this, to the survival skills and things like that. Because again, it goes back to starting a fire. Not everybody knows that anymore. Not a lot of us learned that from our dads growing up. So getting these skills is something that we're looking at. We do get into that in the trips that we guide, because we do got trips all over the world, and we're going to start doing more trips in the United States in 2019. So we'll get more into that as far as the survival aspect. How much water should you carry? How much fuel should you carry? Because it's different when you're in four-wheel drive, how much fuel you burn. Yeah. How much water does someone really need to survive? The average person when they go camping uses 5 to 8 gallons of water a day for washing and everything else. But really, if you have to have water, how much do you have to need to drink in different climates and things like that? And if something does happen and someone gets hurt off-road, what type of things do you need inside your vehicle to get you to take care of whatever happens?
Yeah. So, yeah, it's really good. And as I'm listening to this, I'm thinking, man, this is the kind of stuff that, like you said, not everybody knows how to start a fire, but as fathers, we want to teach our children, ourselves also, but our children especially, how to do some of these basic survival things that we may have gotten, especially if we grew up in the country or something like that. But what's the age limit? I guess what's the youngest that people kind of come in to do this kind of stuff with you guys? And what's the age, I guess, somebody should try to get their kids involved in the off-roading, overlanding stuff?
I really push for for parents to get their kids out as young as possible. If they can't drive, having them in the vehicle with them. My wife gives me a hard time because even when my kids were really young, I took them out on the trails, just taking them out, getting them outdoors, even before, with my oldest one, before I was a trainer. And once the children can drive, I recommend, 15, 16 years old, they got their learner's permit or they've got a license, is actually getting them driving off-road, put them through a class, because kids who drive off-road and learn about the vehicle off-road and how the vehicle dynamics work and the four corners of the vehicle are much less likely to have an accident on the road because they understand how the vehicle reacts in a much slower condition, so that when they do get on the road at speed, they understand how the vehicle is going to react. So they're less likely to get in an accident.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm just thinking, the dads who are listening to this are going, this is a great excuse to get out and do this thing, because it's as adults and as dads, a lot of times we've got the responsibilities primarily towards the family, and our time's pretty sacred. But this is something, guys, that you can get your family involved in, and wives too. I'm not just saying just kids. This is something that everybody could really rally around. And if your wife is not into it, it's still something that your kids may enjoy. And at least one class, if nothing else, from an educational standpoint. But I think I could see this as being huge for fathers and sons and daughters, and just getting out and having a lot of fun together and having just something to kind of rally around and something to talk about and be a part of. And especially as there's a whole community around this as well.
Yeah, definitely. And, a lot of the skills that we learn off-road, even though there's a vast difference between off-road and on-road, a lot of the skills that we teach in our class do transfer over to on-road. We have a specific class that we call field expedient repair, which is, if something breaks on the vehicle, how do you fix it in the field? And it starts as simple as, plugging a tire, which is not a common skill anymore for people. Years ago, anybody could plug a tire, but not many people can anymore, or how to change a tire. Everybody seems to have AAA now, but for us, AAA isn't always an option, right? Yep. So we teach those skills, and we even get more in depth. Our field expedient repair class is the 8 to 10 hour class where we go into the mechanics of the vehicle and how the vehicle works. And for me, I did not have any type of mechanical background growing up, other than, my dad and I would change oil and stuff like that in vehicles. But that's how I learned to work on trucks is I'd have to fix something that's broken. So I'd take it apart and learn how it worked, and then I'd get what I needed and I'd put it back together again, or I would fix it because it had to get me back out from where I was. So, that's how I developed kind of my thought process on mechanics and working on vehicles.
And there's these life lessons that come from this too. I mean, I'm just thinking, just listening to what you're talking about, you've got to, one, overcome the obstacle of not knowing what you're doing and being willing to take lessons from somebody else. You're willing to put yourself in a situation that you're not really sure how you're going to get out of. You've got to think ahead and plan ahead. That's a skill that so many people are lacking in. When you get stuck, you got to take a breath and just get out, walk around, look, evaluate the situation, sort of detach yourself from the moment, and be able to kind of think through, okay, what's another option? What are the options on the table here that may get us out of this? I mean, you're thinking about safety, and so there's so many things that come out of this that aren't just they don't just stay in the world of off-roading, right? They travel in, they become part of life, and how you think about your perspective on the world, and many situations in life where these lessons could be valuable.
Definitely. One thing that off-roading has taught me, and being a trainer, is my father and grandfather taught me this growing up as well, but of course I was young and didn't really listen, is being kind of that humble type mentality. Everyone's got something to teach you, especially in the off-road world, if you just stop and listen. And that's obviously for us guys, taking a class, I don't need it, I can do this. But there's always a better way. And one thing we look for in all the trainers that we hire, one of the big things we look for is guys who have this thirst for knowledge, because every class, I can have a class of all beginners in what we call a four-wheel drive 101.
Yeah.
But there's a really good chance, high probability, that I'm going to learn something from that class. It may be a question that they ask me that I don't have the answer to, so I have to go out and research it, or they may have some type of life experience that they're going to share that's going to create some type of thought process in my brain that's going to lead me to another realization. So keeping kind of that humble mentality and realizing that everyone has something to teach regardless of the vehicle or what they're doing off-road is huge, huge. You can always learn something new.
That's amazing. Yep, absolutely right. Well, Mike, this has been a great conversation. I want to wind down here, but I want to just, I'm just excited about getting out there with you guys. I know Cody's been talking about trying to arrange some kind of get-together, maybe for the guys in Wolf and Iron, probably just the local guys. But because you guys are all over the place, there may be an opportunity to do this. It's something grander, but I'm excited about this. And so as we're just kind of winding down, there's a question that I always ask the guys, and that is, what does it mean to you as a man to do what you do now, to have the impact that you're having, and to do the particular job that you're doing now?
So for me, it's about being a leader in today's society. With the change of men over the years, I grew up with old school type guys, right? My grandfather was a dairy farmer, dead set in his morals and values, and he worked hard every day of his life. My dad was still is very much the same way. So being a leader, that type of leader, and being someone that when I do speak, it's something that's respectful and meaningful to who I'm putting out. That's what being kind of a man in the type of profession that I've chosen has meant, and giving people the tools to get out and enjoy the outdoors, because I believe there's a healing property for, especially for guys in the outdoors. We're kind of set in this world now where we have to work in offices and we have to do the different things, but I think there's a huge emptiness in our lives when we don't incorporate the outdoors into our life, and you need that healing to kind of fix all the stuff you have to do from the daily grind of 9 to 5 during the week. You need that outdoors to heal that and put you back together and make you whole again.
Yep, absolutely agree. Standing Bear he was an Indian chief, and he has a quote that I love. It says, "Man's heart away from nature becomes hard," and I think that's absolutely
yes.
When we have in nature, it softens us up, and in a good way. And so we definitely need that. It recalibrates us in so many ways. Well, like I said, this has been a fantastic conversation. I know we could continue on with this, but I think it's time to get some mud on our tires. And so for the guys who are listening to this podcast and they want to become a part of what you guys are doing, how do they get in touch with Overland Experts?
So they can check us out at overlandexperts.com. On Facebook, we're just Overland Experts, and then Instagram, Overland Experts. But they can shoot me an email, Mike at Overland Experts, or give us a call. Our phone number's right on our website. Be glad to talk with them and help them get into a class.
That's awesome. Okay. Mike, thanks again for being on the podcast. This has been a great conversation.
Thank you, sir. Really enjoyed it.
Well, there you have it, men. I'd love to know what you thought about the episode. Feel free to reach out to me on any of my social media networks. And look, if you got something out of this, make sure another guy does too. Share the episode and make sure it gets in front of the guys that need to hear it the most. Until next time, keep your powder dry, and may a fair wind be always in your sails.